Life on this planet is in SOS mode, and we need all hands on deck. So it's important that you're joining us on Radio Free Georgia's In Tune to Nature program. I'm host Carrie Freeman, coming to you from around Earthday 2025 from Atlanta in the Muskogee Creek Territory and former range of the Red Wolf in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. I'm wearing my Grand Teton National Park shirt with a wolf on it, perfect for radio, because this week is National Park Week, and today we're going to be talking about how to support our national parks by sharing stories about what we love about the parks that we all collectively own, the most beautiful wild places in the nation, to help encourage Americans to ask for political support to stop the Trump and Musk defunding of our parks, and to stop firing our hardworking park rangers and staff who are our park defenders. This all started about a month ago when I attended an Intown women's resistance meeting at Manuel's Tavern right before the hands-off protests nationwide. And the leaders got us into groups, and we broke into groups by issue to brainstorm on grassroots projects in terms of federal agencies we needed to protect from being gutted in all these firings and all the intimidating people into quitting. And we're losing so much talent and collected wisdom across our agencies, causing such low morale. And really, that's what's less efficient, because there's low motivation to work. Everyone's uncertain. Things are not getting done among the federal agencies. So that in itself is a waste of tax money. So this is happening across so many communities. So it's not a savings of tax money here. We need to be showing enthusiasm and appreciation and support for our federal workers. Luckily, I ended up with a group of about 6 women who wanted to work on projects to support our national parks. And Colleen Finn really got us organized, and we've been encouraging people to all share park memories on social media. That was our first goal, so I'll share some of those stories today. I was hoping to have some of the women that are with me in this little grassroots group here in the studio today, but their jobs and their family commitments had to come first this evening. So this reminds us that we're all just regular, busy people trying to fit engaged citizenship into our lives as much as we can, and if we can do it, you can too. So first we looked at what are our national parks in Georgia, trying to kind of find a local connection to all of this. And so I'm actually just kind of pulling it up on I have a national parks app on my phone, reading through some of the parks that are in Georgia, because I recognize that we don't have in Georgia the more iconic, huge wildlife-oriented parks, because there's cultural and historic sites, and then there are also like wilderness sites. So some of the national parks across Georgia are Andersonville in South Georgia, and that is a site that also has a memorial to prisoners of war. The Appalachian National Scenic Trail starts here in Georgia in our national forests. The Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area, close here to Atlanta. Fort Frederica, and that's a national monument in Georgia, and that is on the coast, along with Fort Pulaski. I just went there. That's another national monument. I just went there when I was last visiting Savannah, and that's a really interesting historic site, Fort Pulaski. The Jimmy Carter National Historic Park, and we've certainly, since his passing, a lot of us have focused on that area. And then, of course, we also have the National Library for the Carters here in Atlanta, and I know they've experienced a lot of people retiring and quitting due to all the federal government budget pressures, unfortunately. Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park is here in Georgia. The Ocmulgee Grounds is a national historic park related to Native American culture and civilization. That's kind of down by Macon area. Then we have the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Park, of course, and there's also the King Center that's associated with that. Not all of these things are national parks, but there's several buildings that are part of the King estate there, here, like near downtown Atlanta, kind of Old Fourth Ward area, and that's a really special area that a lot of us bring visitors to Atlanta to. So if you know of any people who work at these places, you should be talking to them to see if you can advocate on their behalf or talk to journalists about what's happening in these organizations. Some other ones I wanted to mention were the Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park, and I wanted to share a little story about that from Christine Johnson, who's a retired park ranger and supervisory forester at Great Smoky Mountains National Park. When I was asking people to collect stories, she said she used to work there. She said, I was working the night shift at Chickamauga Battlefield, driving a park ranger patrol vehicle around the tour route at dusk to close the gates and lock the buildings, and I was surprised to see a man walking through one of the smaller fields where there were no monuments or battle markers. So I parked and walked out to see what he was up to, since we were always on alert for relic hunters and vandals and people otherwise failing to do right in the parks. Suddenly I recognized the elderly Dr. Hal DeSelm, distinguished University of Tennessee botany professor who had served on my graduate committee. He was enjoying native grasses and other rare prairie remnant plants in the open cedar glade and had, as was usual for him, lost track of time. And she ends by saying, national parks are for everyone, meaning like people use the park for all kinds of things. And even when it's a historic park, you can enjoy the natural beauty of it as well. And then I wanted to end with Cumberland Island, which is a national seashore in Georgia, because that place is spectacular, but it has limited access to get out to it. It's very wild, and that's what's part of what makes it so special and precious. And I have enjoyed visiting a couple times there, and I mean, it is fantastic with the wild horses and the pristine beaches and this gorgeous live oak trees and so much wild animal life and relics. So I have some audio I wanted to play that was sent in to us from one of our project members, and she knows somebody named Mitch, and he wanted to share something about his experience with Cumberland Island. So I'm going to play that audio for you.
My name is Mitch Leff, and I would have to say that my favorite national park is Cumberland Island off the Georgia coast. I've camped there with my family and my scout troop for a number of years, and it's my favorite place to camp. Part of the reason is it's accessible only by ferries, so there's no roads, no bridges to get over there, so there's a limited number of people who can be on there at any given time, and a very limited number of people who can be there overnight. It's federally protected. The beaches are left naturally. The rangers don't clean the beaches. They have wild horses, wild turkeys, wild hogs, all kinds of animals. We've done service projects on the island, clearing the trails. It is a beautiful place to camp, to hike. It's very quiet, great place to get away from it all. There are also some ruins on the island, so there's a bit of history from when the Carnegie family owned the island and lived on the island. So it's a great opportunity to learn a little history and enjoy nature in a very quiet way.
I have been reflecting a lot lately on my experiences in our amazing national parks since they appear to be under threat. And I wish I had a count of how many I've visited. It's been dozens in my 55 years. But one of my favorite memories is when I was in college, I think. I want to say probably 19 years old. My dad and I took this epic trip across the country, our first together, to visit my sister who was working in Colorado at the time. I remember the first national park that we visited. It must have been shortly after his, I think, 50th birthday, where he was eligible for the Golden Eagle Pass. I think it used to be as early as 50. It's changed now. And he was so excited. He was like a kid in the candy store, rolling up to the little gate to enter whichever park it was that we were visiting first on the trip. And he handed his ID and said, I want a Golden Eagle Pass. And it's something he talked about for years. Like, he bragged to people about if national parks came up, he bragged about how he's got the Golden Eagle Pass. So he could go to any national parks free after that milestone birthday. That just really stuck with me because he was so excited. My parents always kind of taught us the value of travel and of camping and of visiting places that are different from our own environment. But it really came to light for me in a special way, in a different way, when he just was beside himself with glee that he could now go free, enter any national park for the rest of his days. So, and he made good use of that pass. My dad is in memory care now, and it doesn't remember anything, including even who we are. It's okay. It's just that I hold on to that memory for the both of us. So I'm really rooting for people to stand up and do the right thing here and to save all of our incredible resources that are being threatened right now, but definitely national parks at the top of the list.
You're listening to WRFG Atlanta.
And that was a lovely little story from Jennifer Bracey out in Oregon, and the previous story from Mitch, and I want to thank them for that. Another story that was sent to me from one of the women that I'm working with are three brief memories from a guy named Mike who lives out in Utah. And so I'm just going to read them for you. He said, "My first canyoneering trip was in Zion National Park. It was a pain in the butt to get the permit to go canyoneering, but it was worth it. I remember it being long days full of hiking, rappelling, and adventure. On one of those days, we ended up rescuing a family that got stranded in freezing cold water. That trip was the beginning of many unforgettable canyoneering trips." Another one, he said, was when I summited Mount Rainier. It was the most beautiful first light of the day. It felt like I was experiencing the creation of Earth. It was like powerful experience. It was a powerful experience that connected me with nature and God like nothing ever has. That's wonderful. I remember when I went to Mount Rainier, because it's got its own weather system, there was like a cloud sitting on the top of it. So I do remember eating a peanut butter and jelly. This is me, Carrie, talking, eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, kind of sitting across, kind of looking at it, hoping that the cloud would go away. It never did, but it's still just kind of beautiful to be here. I really wasn't summiting Mount Rainier like Mike, so that's really awesome. And then Mike's last memory says, the day I proposed to my wife, we were in Arches National Park out in Utah. We had hiked to Delicate Arch and went around to the backside where it was just the two of us. As we sat there admiring the beauty of our surroundings, I asked her to marry me. It was the perfect place to start a new adventure together. Thank you, Mike, for sharing that. And I'm going to share just some audio from a little video I posted about my latest kind of adventures out in Yellowstone National Park. Hi, this is Carrie Freeman, and we are encouraging people to share a park memory to support our parks and their staff from these budget cuts and the funding freezes. So we're wanting people to tell a story from a time at one of the great parks. For me, I'm going to pick Yellowstone National Park and my visit, which was like a little over a year ago, my first time to the Lamar Valley. And I was doing this for my book project, so I was checking out my hotel in Gardner and meeting Rick McIntyre, the retired biologist in the Lamar Valley, because he goes there every single morning before sunrise to find where the wolves are, and then he records their stories and their family lives, and he writes these awesome books. So if you haven't read Rick McIntyre's books on the Yellowstone wolves, they're really fascinating. He's very dedicated. So, but there's no self-service out there, so he knew it would be a little bit difficult for me to find him. I have to just like ask all the kind of wolf and wildlife people that hang out in the Lamar Valley with their telescopes. So I went to one group and they said, oh, he was just here, but he left, I think. And so then I drove back, and you're parking on the side of the road, and then they're like saying, oh, I think he went up over the ridge. And so I saw these guys kind of going up over the ridge. So then I walk up, like I'm kind of trampling through some like sagebrush and stuff on these mountains, and I almost followed the guys over the ridge, but I actually didn't even know it was him. So I just decided like I really shouldn't be here. But I did take a moment to savor it because the sun was rising. I'm usually not up that early. And so to be in the Lamar Valley when the sun was rising, it's a very expansive area. And that's why actually people need telescopes to even see a lot of the animals, not just binoculars, but I did have binoculars. So I was like, I can't keep walking up over this ridge. So I just kind of made my way back down to the street. And then I just kind of hung out for a few hours with all the people that gather there that are tourists and like wildlife tour operators. And people were nice enough to share their telescopes with me. And I did see my very first wild wolf. I don't know if I'll ever see one again, but it wasn't worth taking a picture because it was like the distance was so far away. I was using someone's telescope. But still, technically, I did see a wolf. And then you could hear the coyotes, and then you would see some bison in the distance, and you'd see elk, and then some of the birds get a little closer to you, like the ravens. And so I had to use the restroom, and there's like hardly any place to do that. And so I like drove down to the Lamar Valley river trailhead, and then they had, the one kind of porta potty, so you stand in line there or whatever. Okay. But then after that, all of a sudden, these bison, there was like a herd or family of bison, there was like 15 of them, crossed the one road in the Lamar Valley, like right in front. So me and a lot of other people kind of go over to take their picture, but not like stand in front of them. But I didn't expect to get so close to a group of bison, and then they were like dust bathing and stuff, and so it was really awesome. But I was like, okay, I need to get back to where I think Rick McIntyre needs to be, because I'm still trying to interview him for my book, and he knows that we're meeting. But anyway, so I go back down there, and through leaving notes on his car and different things, we finally, got together, and then we decided to drive back to that same trailhead where I had parked before anyway and saw the bison, because that would be a place where we could sit down. And so like I was interviewing him, and like I was sitting on a rock, right in the Lamar Valley, talking to him all about the wolves and recording it for my book interview. And then suddenly this guy and his son come over to us because he's looking for somebody that has a certain white rental car that he hit with his RV, and it was my rental car. So then I was so flustered, like I had to go kind of deal with this guy and his kid. Is very honest with him, but anyway, to write down some stuff for a claim when I'd worked so hard to get this interview with Rick McIntyre. And so then I went back over and finished the interview. But afterwards, Rick was saying, oh, you need to report that incident to like go to the Mammoth Hot Springs visitor center so you can report the incident. Because also when you're in Yellowstone, you're not in a city. There's no like regular police. So I had to drive, it was on my way back to the Mammoth Hot Springs. And then I got to meet one of the rangers there who kind of serves as a police officer of sorts. And then like when we were going out to see the damage to my car, she was taking me kind of the longer route because there was all these elk around the visitor center. And it says like don't approach the elk and everything. But she was actually worried because they're kind of in their rutting season, their mating season. And so you have to be kind of careful of the bull elk. And even they look kind of, they're big, but they still kind of look harmless. But she was being really careful. And then at one point she got us, like all the people that were there, they had us go up on the porch of the visitor center to stay away from the elk. Even though, again, I didn't see anything dangerous, but this is what they have to do. They have to corral people all the time because we are part of the problem. And even though I had originally called my insurance agent to see that I had coverage, and because I had heard that, you could get your car damaged by an elk who's in rut that might like damage your car. But of course it was a human who caused the problem and hit my car. And I'm kind of part of the problem being out there and everything. And I actually polluted because I dropped my friend Melody's binocular lens somewhere out in the Lamar Valley. So I just basically polluted. So anyway, the point is these rangers, whether it was Rick McIntyre telling stories about how he had to deal with wolf jams and bison jams on the road and how people kind of try to get too close to the wolves and the bison, and hence the shirt I got there, don't pet the bison. Like, we need the staff, they're already understaffed, we need them there to actually corral us and keep us away from the natural inhabitants of the area so we can enjoy the place, but in a much a more like wildlife friendly way. And already these people they're in charge of millions of acres of wilderness area, but millions of visitors from all around the world, and they're already understaffed. They can't take these kinds of cuts, and then we will get more involved in negative ways with the bison and the wildlife, and people will get hurt, and some of the wild animals might get hurt from people kind of interfering in their lives, because there is a lot of people there, and like when you're at the parks, you can tell that as much as people want to take pictures of the beauty, they really want to see like large charismatic animals, like the wolves and the bears and the bison and the elk and all these animals. And so there are people trying to get kind of closer to them. So anyway, I really appreciate the park staff, and they helped me out, and they're really dedicated. Like even the retired staff people like Rick McIntyre still volunteer at the park and work really hard to protect the animals. So we need to be supporting the parks and telling our Congress people that we don't want any cuts to the national parks and in their budget and in their staffing. These are really, really important areas. We need more people working there. All right, that you might heard the background noise there because that was me doing some recording from my porch a week or so ago and posted that on social media. So if you're interested in speaking out or recording your own video, that would be great, or just audio. And I think it's good to just spread enthusiasm and love for our parks by sharing our stories on social media and asking other people to do that, and see if they're interested in supporting policies to fully fund and staff our national parks. And I say our parks because they're not just owned by the government, they're owned by us. And so the staff that works there, it protects them on our behalf and behalf of the wild animals. And some of the supportive organizations, other ways to get involved, there's nonprofit organizations that Christine Johnson likes that I shared on my show in March that I did with the retired forester, the head forester from the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Christine Johnson. She likes the group called PEER, which is Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility, PEER, Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. That's a resource group. Another group is the National Park Conservation Association, the National Park Conservation Association. And I get a lot of information from them on action items for supporting the Park Service. Groups like indivisible.org are important. In fact, I think it was through since I signed up on indivisible.org, they connect you with community groups. And one of the best ways to keep your spirits up and be a happier person and feel more engaged is to join groups. And honestly, any kind of groups in your community is going to be helpful for you. And I think it was through Indivisible that I got in touch with the Intown Women's Resistance Group. So that's another option for people locally who identify as women here in Atlanta, the Intown Women's Resistance Group. Or you can just start your own group and come up with your own plan. But one of the things that I did was contact my federal level Congress people, my representative in the House, and yours might be different from mine. And then if you're in Georgia, we've got our two senators Ossoff and Warnock. And I called each of their offices and spoke to their staff briefly, or sometimes you could just leave a message. And I was asking them to do something to fully fund and staff the park. So that's an option for you if you are also interested in doing that. An update to my original broadcast is that some Republicans were trying to sneak a public lands sell-off into a recent budget bill at the last minute, really without consulting anyone. And some other senators, representatives, and the news media did, notice it, and people are starting to complain. So this was trying to sell off our public lands, some of them that were out in Utah and Nevada. So just be on the alert for any time, not only that our parks are being degraded through spending freezes and firing of staff, hardworking, effective, good staff. Also, our lands, which could be Bureau of Land Management lands, it could be National Forest Service lands, or it could be Park Service or like wildlife refuge lands. Just pay attention to our lands that we collectively own. If they are being sold off to private interests, just wealthy individuals, or more likely to industries who want to extract and exploit, we need to pay attention to that and speak out. So hopefully this podcast has got you excited about sharing information about public lands and going to visit them and being really nice to the staff and maybe doing some donating to the parks while you're there, or those park organizations that I mentioned earlier, and I'll put links to in the podcast notes. So let's just spread the word and not act like this isn't a huge deal and that our public lands are not a national treasure. In fact, they're a universal treasure, because many areas of the United States that are designated as national parks are also UNESCO World Heritage Sites. So they've been designated as places of extreme importance to all human beings. And I've gone to some of those for my books. Like we've got the Everglades, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Glacier Bay National Park, and Glacier National Park. These are some of our UNESCO World Heritage Sites that are also national. So this isn't just in our own interest, it's the interest of all humans in preserving these spaces, and for the wild inhabitants who are non-humans who live there. I feel like we owe it to them. So thank you very much for listening, as always, to In Tune to Nature. It's broadcast every Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time online at wrfg.org and on Atlanta radio station 89.3 FM. And we post action items, news, and podcasts that you can access off our page at wrfg.org/intunetonature. The views and opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of WRFG, its board staff, or volunteers. I'm one of those volunteers. I'm host Carrie Freeman, asking you to please support independent, non-commercial media. We're talking NPR and PBS, who are also under attack right now. But I'm also talking about Radio Free Georgia. That's my radio station here in Atlanta that is the host of In Tune to Nature. And their website is wrfg.org for any donations. Remember to take care of yourself and others, like our national park employees and the free-living animals who live in or near our parks and need protection and support from our National Park Service guardians. Thank you for listening and being an engaged human-animal earthling. Cheers.